Okay, morning everyone. This is your one slide, a 5-minute run through of Jekyll and Hyde chapter 1. So if you've not watched these before, I talk pretty quick and I'm sure you can keep up. It's going to be 5 minutes, I'll try my best. Okay, so the story begins in London and we see two guys out for a walk. The first guy is called Utterson, Gabriel Utterson. He's a lawyer. He's one of these kind of quite sensible, quite rational, thoughtful guys, quite sort of keeps himself to himself. He's walking with his distant relative mate, Mr Enfield. They're both Victorian gentlemen. They're both quite posh. They kind of walk around London every week. Usually don't really say much, look at things. And in this case, they're walking around and they spot this door, this strange door, which Enfield kind of points out, and he says, have a look at this. Does this look weird to you? And I want to tell you a story about what happened at that door once. So he tells this story of this strange moment where one night he spotted this weird looking guy who we'll talk about in a minute how he's described, and he basically tramples on this young girl, and she's meant to be about sort of 8 or 9, and he just tramples calmly on her, attacks her. Everyone's really shocked when they see it, and Enfield talks about them then going up to this guy and saying, what the hell are you doing? And they're sort of grabbing him saying, look, you've got to pay this girl some sort of compensation, like yeah, her family are there kicking off, and he says, all right, all right, all right. So he goes into this room, into this door, and comes out with a cheque for £100, which back then would have been thousands, and they're all really shocked. So he said, look, this will keep you quiet, won't it? So he gives them the £100, and then they're convinced that the girl's all right, by the way, but she's she's a bit injured, and they take the £100 and go, well, this is bound to be a fake. So they hang out all night with him, making sure that it is genuine, and then sure enough it is. It's not actually signed by him though. They get the money and then he clears off, and so Enfield's telling this story to Utterson, and he's like, this is really weird, like well, like, whose name was it? He said, well, I'll tell you the name of the guy, and his name was Mr Hyde, this weird guy. And he's like, right, I've heard that name. Utterson says, I've heard that name, and I can guess who the name on the check was, but I don't actually want to talk about this anymore because it's freaking me out a bit. So the chapter ends with them just sort of saying, right, let's not talk about this ever again, which is a classic one from Stevenson at the beginning of any kind of drama you would get, like just to hook you and get you interested, and the detective story kind of starts there. If this was like a film or a TV series, that would be where the kind of music and the title sequence starts. Okay, right. So the key quotes. Let's move over to this section over here. This bit here is how the lean, long, dusty, dreary, and yet somehow lovable. That's how Mr. Utson's described. So just try and think of Utson as just like a safe pair of hands. He's a solid, quite boring guy who's going to hold your hand through this story. This bit here is another key quote. This is how the door is described. It's important to note that the door is kind of blistered and stained. In other words, in this perfect posh part of London, there's this weird looking door. So just remember that, because a lot of this book is about contrasts, things that are the opposite put next to each other. In this case, it's a dirty, horrible, blistered door next to this beautiful house. This is a key quote because it's calm, trample calmly. What I said before, this is Hyde's attack. Shows how easy it was for him to commit violence. These three are kind of descriptions of Hyde. So he's like a damn juggernaut, which is like a big giant monster type thing. He said he never saw a man he disliked so much. He doesn't really know why. He's got a strange feeling of deformity. In other words, there was something weird about Hyde, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He just didn't like him. Okay, so what Stevenson's trying to get at in this chapter are these things in the middle. So you got to imagine these guys are kind of like perfect gentlemen. They just straight back, everything's really posh. They never want to let their kind of pride down. But there's obviously kind of secrecy going on in that world. There's darkness in this light world. And the dangers of this beautiful, perfect world are just around the corner. In this case, literally, violence was just around the corner. It's kind of going to reveal to us, just skip down to this one, the hypocrisy of this society. So you've got these perfect people, but then you're going to have like echoes or little shades of darkness and weirdness and violence. And it also shows us the power of money, that, with £100, that was the end of the matter, and he got away with it. And whoever it was, Hyde, and whoever this name on the check was, money seemed to sort everything out. Okay, so Stevenson establishes this chapter as the beginning of the detective story. So some violence happened by this weird guy, Mr. Hyde, but then he paid them off in order to keep the whole thing quiet. Okay, so that is how the story is established. Right. Hope you enjoyed it. Click on the chapter 2 for the next bit.